The principal ran into lunch crying and yelled, "Who knows my daughter?" Principal Vaughn never cried. In 4 years at Northridge High, I'd seen him suspend kids without blinking, fire teachers mid-semester, stand unfazed while parents screamed in his face during board meetings. The man was granite. So when he burst through the cafeteria doors at 12:47 on a Thursday with tears streaming down his face and mascara from his wife's makeup smeared under his eyes like he'd been rubbing them raw, every fork in the room froze midair. His voice cracked when he screamed it. "Who knows my daughter?" His hands were shaking. His tie was loose and crooked. There was dirt on his knees like he'd been crawling on the ground. Behind him, 2 police officers appeared, both with radios crackling. Officer Mendez and Officer Liu, the school resource officers who usually just stood around looking bored. They weren't bored now. They looked grim. Principal Vaughn's eyes swept the cafeteria, wild and desperate, landing on faces one by one. His daughter Lily was a sophomore. Quiet girl, honor roll, always reading in corners. I'd had biology with her last year. She sat 2 rows ahead and never spoke unless called on. "Who knows Lily Vaughn?" The principal shouted again, louder this time. "Tell me right now. Where is she? What happened to her?" My best friend Austin grabbed my arm under the table. His grip was tight enough to hurt. "Dude," he whispered, "Lily's missing." I stared at Principal Vaughn's face, at the raw panic there, and my stomach dropped. This wasn't about school rules or academic integrity or any of the usual administrative nonsense. This was a father losing his mind in front of 400 students because his daughter was gone. 3 hands went up across the cafeteria. Mine wasn't one of them. I knew Lily existed, had seen her around, but we'd never spoken outside of that one biology class where we'd been lab partners for exactly 2 weeks before she asked to switch. She'd been polite about it, said she worked better alone, but I'd gotten the message. I wasn't worth her time. The 3 students with raised hands were pulled from their seats immediately. Emma Chen from Student Council. Fuck, not that name. Make it someone else. The 3 students were Vanessa Price from Student Council, David Coe from the theater department, and Isaiah Brooks from sophomore English. All of them looked terrified as Officer Mendez gestured them forward. Principal Vaughn's face collapsed with hope when he saw them approaching. His voice dropped to something almost pleading. "When did you last see her? What was she doing? Was she upset about something?" Vanessa spoke first, her voice shaking. "I saw her yesterday after school, Mr. Vaughn. She was at her locker around 3:30. She seemed fine, just normal." David nodded quickly. "Yeah, I saw her in English 4th period yesterday. She turned in her Gatsby essay and left right when the bell rang. I didn't notice anything weird." Isaiah hesitated before speaking, his eyes darting to the police officers. I saw her this morning, actually, before 1st period. She was in the parking lot talking to someone in a car." Principal Vaughn's head snapped toward Isaiah so fast I heard his neck crack from 3 tables away. "What car? What kind of car? Who was driving?" Isaiah backed up a step. "I don't know, man. I mean, Mr. Vaughn. It was dark blue, maybe black. A sedan. I couldn't see who was inside because the windows were tinted. But Lily got in, and they drove away. She looked like she knew whoever it was." The cafeteria had gone completely silent. You could hear the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Principal Vaughn's face went from panicked to something harder, something that looked like rage mixed with terror. "What time?" Isaiah swallowed. "Like 7:15, maybe 7:20, right before 1st period started." Officer Liu pulled out a notebook and started writing. "Mr. Vaughn, when did you realize Lily was missing?" Principal Vaughn's voice was hoarse. "She didn't come home last night. My wife and I thought she was staying at her friend Becca's house for a study group, but Becca's mom called this morning asking if Lily was sick because Becca had been waiting for her all night. We tried calling Lily's phone. It goes straight to voicemail. We drove to the school, checked her locker, asked her teachers. Nobody's seen her since yesterday afternoon. Except Isaiah just said he saw her this morning," Officer Mendez pointed out. Isaiah's face went pale. "I swear that's what I saw. She was getting into a car in the parking lot this morning." Officer Liu exchanged a glance with Mendez. "Mr. Brooks, are you certain it was this morning? Not yesterday morning?" Isaiah opened his mouth, then closed it. His eyebrows drew together. It was dark out. I thought it was this morning because I just got to school, but maybe, I don't know. I'm confused now." David raised his hand like we were still in class. If Isaiah saw her yesterday morning, that means she's been missing since then, right? That's over 24 hours. Principal Vaughn made a sound like a wounded animal. "My daughter has been missing for over a day and I didn't know. I thought she was studying. I thought she was safe." Officer Mendez put a hand on his shoulder. "Sir, we need you to come to the station with us. We'll need recent photos, her phone records, a list of friends and contacts, everything. We're going to find her." Principal Vaughn nodded, but his legs seemed to give out. He grabbed the nearest table for support, and I realized it was my table. His hand landed right next to my lunch tray. His eyes met mine for a split second. There was nothing but desperation there. "Help me," his expression said. "Someone help me find my daughter." Then Officer Liu was guiding him toward the exit, and the 3 students who'd raised their hands were being taken somewhere else, probably for more detailed questioning. The cafeteria stayed silent for maybe 5 seconds after they left. Then, it exploded. Everyone started talking at once, pulling out phones, texting, speculating. Austin leaned across the table. Holy shit, Lily Vaughn is missing. Like actually missing. Do you think she ran away, or do you think something happened to her? I didn't answer, because I was remembering something. 2 weeks ago in the library during study hall, I'd seen Lily sitting alone at one of the back tables. She'd been crying quietly, her shoulders shaking, staring at her phone screen. I'd walked past on my way to return a book, and she'd looked up at me. Her eyes were red and swollen. She'd opened her mouth like she wanted to say something, then shook her head and looked back down at her phone. I'd kept walking because it felt like she wanted privacy. Now I wondered what she'd been about to say. Now I wondered if that moment mattered. My phone buzzed. Text from a number I didn't recognize. You saw something. Don't pretend you didn't. I stared at the screen. My hands started shaking. I showed it to Austin and his face went white. Dude, who sent that? I don't know. The number's not in my contacts. Another text came through. The library. 2 weeks ago. You walked right past her and you saw. My heart was pounding now. Someone had been watching me in the library that day. Someone knew I'd seen Lily crying. Someone knew I'd walked away without helping. Austin grabbed my arm again. You need to tell someone about this. Tell the police. This is like witness intimidation or something. I was about to respond when the PA system crackled to life. Vice Principal Stamos' voice came through, strained and formal. Students and staff, we need everyone to remain calm. The situation is under control. Classes will continue as scheduled. However, we ask that anyone with information about Lily Vaughn's whereabouts please report immediately to the main office. I repeat, if you have any information about Lily Vaughn, come to the main office now. The PA clicked off. Austin looked at me. You're going, right? You're going to tell them about the texts and about seeing her crying in the library. I should have said yes immediately. I should have stood up and walked straight to the office. But something stopped me. The text had said, don't pretend you didn't see. It hadn't said, don't tell anyone. It was a warning. But what kind? Was someone threatening me to stay quiet, or was someone pushing me to speak up? My phone buzzed again. She trusted you once. Biology class. Remember? You were the only one who listened when she talked about her research project. She said you were different from the other guys. That stopped me cold because it was true. During our brief 2 weeks as lab partners, Lily had talked about this independent research project she was doing on environmental contamination in local water sources. She'd been passionate about it, animated in a way I'd never seen her in regular class. I'd asked questions, and she'd lit up, explaining her methodology and findings. Then, she'd asked to switch partners, and I'd figured she'd been annoyed I was asking too many questions or taking up too much of her presentation time. But the text made it sound like she'd valued our conversations, like maybe she'd switched partners for a different reason. I stood up. Austin looked at me with relief. Finally. Let's go. No, I said. I need to go alone. If someone's watching me, I don't want you involved. Austin's face hardened. That's exactly why I should come with you. You're not going into this by yourself. But I was already walking away, heading not toward the main office, but toward the library. If someone wanted me to remember that moment 2 weeks ago, maybe there was something there I'd missed. Maybe Lily had left something behind. The library was empty except for Mrs. Kowalski at the circulation desk, absorbed in cataloging returns. I headed straight to the back table where I'd seen Lily crying. It looked exactly the same. Same scratched wood surface, same uncomfortable plastic chairs, same view of the parking lot through the window. I sat down in the chair Lily had been sitting in and tried to see what she'd been seeing. The parking lot was half full. Students' cars in neat rows, faculty spots near the building entrance. Nothing unusual. I pulled out my phone and looked at the texts again. You saw something. She trusted you once. There had to be more to this than just walking past someone who was crying. I closed my eyes and forced myself to replay that moment in detail. Lily at the table, phone in hand, crying. Me walking past with a book. Her looking up at me, red eyes, opening her mouth to speak, then shaking her head and looking back at her phone. What had been on her phone screen? I hadn't seen it clearly, but it had been bright. Not a text message screen, those are darker. Something white or light-colored. A photo, maybe? A document? My phone buzzed. You're in the right place. Now look where she was looking. I spun around, searching the library for cameras or someone watching, but saw nothing. Mrs. Kowalski was still absorbed in her work. The library appeared empty. I turned back to the window and looked where Lily would have been looking. The parking lot. Faculty spots. Principal Vaughn's reserved spot was visible from this window, marked with his name on a sign. 2 weeks ago, what would have been parked there? My phone buzzed again. Wednesday 2 weeks ago. 3:45 p.m. Check the school security logs if you're smart enough. This person, whoever they were, was giving me breadcrumbs, leading me somewhere. But why? Why not just tell the police directly? Why involve me? I took a screenshot of all the texts and headed toward the main office. Even if I didn't understand what was happening, I needed to report this. The office was chaos when I arrived. Parents were calling, Teachers were gathering in worried clusters, and I could hear Principal Vaughn's voice behind the closed door of the conference room, loud and anguished. Vice Principal Stamos saw me in the doorway. "Can I help you? I have information about Lily Vaughn." Her expression changed immediately from bureaucratic stress to sharp focus. "Come with me." She led me past the main desk into a small meeting room where Officer Mendez was reviewing what looked like attendance records. "Officer, this student says he has information." Officer Mendez looked up, pulled out his notebook. "Name? Jeremy Holt, Jr. Lily Vaughn and I were lab partners briefly last year in biology." He wrote it down. "What information do you have, Jeremy?" I showed him my phone, the string of texts from the unknown number. His expression darkened as he read them. "When did you receive these?" "Starting right after Principal Vaughn left the cafeteria. The first one came maybe 2 minutes after." Officer Mendez took my phone, started screenshotting the messages. "These texts reference you seeing something in the library 2 weeks ago." "Tell me about that." I explained the whole thing. Seeing Lily crying at the back table, her looking up at me, the way she'd seemed like she wanted to say something but didn't. The texts claiming she'd trusted me during our biology partnership. Officer Mendez listened without interrupting, taking notes the whole time. "And these texts just started today? You've never received anything from this number before?" "Never. I don't even know whose number it is." He was already typing something into his laptop. "We'll trace it, but if someone's being this careful, it's probably a burner phone or a spoofed number." He looked up at me. "Jeremy, I need you to think very carefully. During your time as Lily's lab partner, did she ever mention being scared of someone? Feeling threatened? Having problems with anyone?" I thought back to those 2 weeks. We'd mostly talked about science, about her research project. She'd mentioned her parents once, said her dad was stressed about school board politics, and her mom was traveling for work constantly. She'd said it in a way that sounded lonely, like she wished her mom was around more. But nothing that screamed danger or abuse. No, nothing like that. She seemed, I don't know, isolated maybe? But not scared. Officer Mendez wrote something down. "What about friends? Did she mention anyone she was close to?" "She talked about someone named Becca once. Said they were supposed to work on a project together." That matched what Principal Vaughn had said about Lily supposedly staying at Becca's house. Officer Mendez nodded slowly. "Becca Lindstrom. We've already spoken to her. She says Lily was supposed to come over Wednesday night for studying but never showed up. Becca assumed Lily had forgotten or something came up, didn't think to call Lily's parents because she figured they knew. So Lily told her parents she was going to Becca's, told Becca she might not make it, and then disappeared somewhere in between." My phone buzzed in Officer Mendez's hand. He looked at the screen, then at me. Another text. It says, "Ask about the car in Spot 12 on Wednesday the 6th at 3:45. Spot 12 is faculty parking. We can check security footage from that date and time." Vice Principal Stamos, who'd been standing quietly in the corner, spoke up. "Spot 12 is assigned to Coach Draven. Nate Draven, girls' soccer coach." Officer Mendez's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his posture. "Is Coach Draven here today?" "I haven't seen him," Stamos said. "Let me check." She pulled out her phone, made a call, waited. Her face went pale. "He called in sick this morning, said he had the flu." Officer Mendez stood up. "I need his home address, his phone number, and I need to see every piece of security footage from the past 3 weeks showing parking spot 12. Now." Stamos nodded and rushed out. Officer Mendez looked at me. "Jeremy, I need you to stay on campus. Don't leave school grounds. If you receive any more texts, you come find me immediately. Understand?" I nodded. He left the room, already talking into his radio. I sat there alone for maybe 30 seconds before my phone buzzed again. It was still lying on the table where Officer Mendez had left it. The new text read, "Good, now they're looking at the right person. But it's bigger than him. Check Lily's research project. The real one, not the school version." I grabbed my phone and ran back to the library. Mrs. Kowalski looked up as I burst through the doors. "Jeremy, is everything okay? I need to access the digital archives, the student research repository. Can I use your computer?" She hesitated. "That requires teacher authorization or a student account with research privileges. It's about Lily Vaughn." "Please." Mrs. Kowalski's face softened with understanding. She stood and gestured to her computer. "Make it quick." I logged into the student research portal using my own account, then searched for Lily Vaughn's projects. Her official school submission came up first, a well-formatted paper on water contamination in Northridge Creek with standard methodology and unremarkable findings. Competent work, but nothing groundbreaking. But the text had said the real one, not the school version. I clicked through her account permissions and saw she had a private folder labeled "Draft Work Do Not Submit." My account shouldn't have been able to access it, but there was a shared permission from 6 weeks ago, shared with Jeremy Holt. She'd given me access to her private research, and I'd never known. I clicked the folder open and found a completely different project. This one was titled "Environmental and Chemical Analysis of Industrial Runoff from Northridge Manufacturing with Evidence of Systematic Violations." The paper was over 40 pages long. I started reading, and my stomach turned. Lily hadn't just been studying the creek. She'd been investigating Northridge Manufacturing, the biggest employer in town, the company that sponsored half the school's sports programs and donated hundreds of thousands to the district every year. Her research documented illegal chemical dumping, falsified environmental reports, and contaminated groundwater that exceeded EPA limits by catastrophic margins. She had photos, water samples with lab analysis, internal company documents that she'd somehow obtained. This wasn't a high school science project. This was investigative journalism that could shut down the entire plant and cost the town thousands of jobs. At the bottom of her report was a note dated 1 week ago. Contacted EPA regional office. They're opening an investigation. Meeting with Agent Voss next Wednesday to hand over evidence. Wednesday, the day Lily disappeared. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through the rest of her files. She'd documented threats too. Screenshots of anonymous messages telling her to drop the project, to stop asking questions, to mind her own business. Photos of her car with slashed tires. A video of someone following her home from school. She'd reported none of it to police or school administration. Instead, she'd compiled everything methodically, adding it to her evidence folder like she knew exactly what she was doing. At the very bottom was a file labeled Insurance. I clicked it open and found a video. Lily's face appeared on screen, sitting in her bedroom, speaking directly to camera. Her voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. My name is Lily Vaughn, and I'm making this video in case something happens to me. I've been investigating Northridge Manufacturing for 7 months. I have proof they're violating federal environmental laws and poisoning our community. I've been threatened, followed, and intimidated. If I disappear, or if anything happens to me, the people responsible are connected to Northridge Manufacturing. I've already sent copies of my evidence to the EPA, but I'm leaving this file here too. Coach Nate Draven has been helping me. He's the only adult I trusted with this information. If something happens, find Coach Draven. He knows everything. The video ended. I sat there staring at the screen, my mind racing. Coach Draven was helping her? But the anonymous texts had pointed to Coach Draven's car, had led the police to investigate him. Unless Coach Draven was the threat, and Lily had been wrong to trust him, or unless someone was framing Coach Draven to stop the investigation. I needed to tell Officer Mendez about this immediately, but my phone buzzed before I could move. One more thing. Check who sits on the Northridge Manufacturing Board of Directors. Specifically, check the community liaison position. I opened a new browser tab and searched for Northridge Manufacturing's corporate structure. Found their website, clicked through to About Us, then Board of Directors. Scrolled through names and titles until I reached Community Liaison. The photo loaded, and my breath caught. Principal Richard Vaughn, board member and community liaison since 2019. Lily's father was on the board of the company she was investigating. The company that was illegally dumping chemicals and poisoning people. The company whose crimes she'd reported to the EPA. Did Principal Vaughn know about Lily's investigation? Did he know his daughter was about to destroy his reputation and cost him his board position? The desperate father in the cafeteria had seemed genuine, but so much of this didn't add up. I grabbed my phone and ran back toward the main office, but stopped halfway down the hall. Officer Mendez was standing there with Principal Vaughn, both of them looking at a laptop screen. Principal Vaughn was nodding, pointing at something, speaking in that same desperate voice. We need to find her. Please, you have to understand. My daughter means everything to me. I can't lose her. His performance was perfect. If I hadn't just learned about his connection to Northridge Manufacturing, I would have believed him completely. Instead, I turned around and headed for the side exit, pulling out my phone to call 911 directly. I needed to talk to someone who wasn't involved with the school, who wouldn't report back to Principal Vaughn. The 911 operator answered on the second ring. This is 911. What's your emergency? My name is Jeremy Holt. I'm a student at Northridge High. I have critical information about the Lily Vaughn missing persons case. It's not safe to talk to the school resource officers. I need to speak with detectives who aren't connected to the school district. There was a pause. Hold, please. I waited, pressed against the wall near the exit, watching the hallway for any sign of Principal Vaughn or the officers. A new voice came on the line, deeper and more authoritative. This is Detective Kowalski with the county police. I understand you have information about Lily Vaughn? I'm Jeremy Holt. Lily and I were lab partners last year. I just found her private research files. She was investigating Northridge Manufacturing for environmental crimes. She had evidence of illegal dumping, and she contacted the EPA. She disappeared the day she was supposed to meet with a federal agent. And Principal Vaughn, her father, sits on Northridge Manufacturing's board of directors. Detective Kowalski's tone sharpened. Where are you right now, Jeremy? At school. I'm near the east exit. I need to get these files to someone who isn't involved with the school district. Stay where you are. Don't move. I'm sending units to your location now. Do not speak to anyone from the school. Do you understand? I understand. Jeremy, I need you to answer this carefully. Do you feel like you're in immediate danger? I thought about the anonymous texts, about Principal Vaughn's performance in the cafeteria, about Coach Draven calling in sick. I don't know. Someone's been texting me all day, leading me to this information. I don't know who or why. Stay on the line with me. Units are 3 minutes away. Detective Kowalski paused. Jeremy, the person texting you, are they threatening you or helping you? Helping, I think. They led me to Lily's research. They pointed the school officers toward Coach Draven, but I think that might be misdirection. I think they're trying to expose what really happened without revealing themselves. 2 minutes. Keep talking to me. Tell me about these research files. What exactly did Lily document? I explained everything while watching the hallway, my voice low and urgent. The chemical dumping, the contaminated groundwater, the threats Lily had received, the video she'd made naming Coach Draven as her ally, Principal Vaughn's position on the company board. Detective Kowalski listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said, "Jeremy, this is extremely important. In Lily's video, did she say anything about where she was planning to meet the EPA agent?" The video just said next Wednesday. That was yesterday. She must have had a specific time and location. I pulled my phone away from my ear and opened Lily's files again while keeping Detective Kowalski on speaker. Scrolled through her documents until I found an email chain with someone named Agent Patricia Voss. The most recent email from Voss read, "Meeting confirmed for Wednesday 3 p.m. at the Northridge Creek access point behind the manufacturing plant. Come alone and bring all physical evidence." I read it aloud to Detective Kowalski. His response was immediate. "Units are pulling up now. You should see them outside the east doors. Go with them. We're sending people to the creek access point immediately." I pushed through the doors and saw 3 police cars in the parking lot, lights off but officers standing ready. One of them waved me over. "Jeremy Holt?" "Yes. Get in. We're taking you to the station where you'll be safe. You did the right thing calling us." I climbed into the back of the patrol car and we pulled away from school. Through the window, I saw Principal Vaughn running out the main doors, his face contorted with rage. He was yelling something, pointing at the police car, but we were already turning onto the main road. The officer in the passenger seat looked back at me. "Don't worry about him. Detective Kowalski is handling it." My phone buzzed. The anonymous number again. "You did good. She's alive. They're bringing her in now." Before I could process that, the officer's radio crackled. "All units, this is Detective Kowalski. We've located Lily Vaughn at the creek access point. She's alive and in protective custody. Coach Nate Draven is with her. Both are safe. I need units to Northridge High School immediately to detain Principal Richard Vaughn for questioning." Relief flooded through me so intensely I felt dizzy. Lily was alive. The officer who'd been driving looked back at me with something like respect. "Kid, you might have just saved that girl's life." We arrived at the county police station, and I was taken to a conference room with bottles of water and a box of stale donuts. Detective Kowalski appeared 10 minutes later, a tall man with gray hair and sharp eyes. He sat down across from me and pulled out a recording device. "Jeremy, I need to get your full statement on record, but first I want you to know that Lily Vaughn is safe. She's been in hiding since Wednesday afternoon with Coach Draven. They never made it to the meeting with the EPA agent because they were followed from the school. Coach Draven recognized the tale and made the decision to hide Lily until they could figure out who was after her." "Why didn't they call the police?" Detective Kowalski's expression was grim, because Lily didn't know who to trust. Her father is on the Northridge Manufacturing Board. The school resource officers are hired by the district, which receives substantial funding from Northridge Manufacturing. Even some of our local police have family members who work at the plant. She and Coach Draven decided their safest option was to go dark until they could get the evidence to federal authorities. But someone knew where they were planning to meet? Yes. We're still investigating how, but we believe someone intercepted communications between Lily and Agent Voss, possibly through Lily's phone or email. When Lily realized she was being followed, she and Coach Draven abandoned the meeting and went to a remote location. Coach Draven used his personal network to keep them supplied and hidden. That explained why he'd called in sick this morning. What about the texts I received? Who sent them? Detective Kowalski leaned back in his chair. That's the interesting part. We traced the number and it belongs to a phone registered to Lily Vaughn. A second phone that wasn't her primary phone. She was texting you? But why? Why not just tell me directly or text the police? Because Lily was still hiding and didn't want to reveal her location until she knew it was safe. But she needed someone to find her research and understand the full scope of what was happening. She chose you because she remembered you from biology class. She said you were one of the few people who actually listened to her ideas and didn't dismiss her. I sat there processing this. Lily had been orchestrating everything from hiding, leading me through breadcrumbs because she knew if she just dumped everything on me at once, I might not believe it or might tell the wrong people. She'd been controlling the investigation from the shadows. Detective Kowalski continued. Lily's been giving us information in real time. When she saw her father show up at school this morning and stage that scene in the cafeteria, she knew he was trying to control the narrative, make himself look like the desperate father so that when she was found, or if she disappeared permanently, he'd be above suspicion. The crying, the panic, all of it was performance? All of it. Principal Vaughn knew exactly where his daughter was because he's the one who hired people to find her and silence her. When she went into hiding and he couldn't locate her, he panicked and decided to play the grieving father publicly. It would give him cover and put pressure on local police to find her quickly so his people could get to her first. My stomach turned. How could a father do that to his daughter? Detective Kowalski's expression hardened. Lily's research was going to cost Principal Vaughn his board position, his reputation, and potentially his freedom. He's been covering up Northridge Manufacturing's violations for years in his role as community liaison. When Lily started investigating, he tried to stop her quietly. The threats, the intimidation, that was all him trying to scare her into dropping it. When that didn't work and she contacted the EPA, he decided she had to disappear before she could testify. The conference room door opened, and a woman in a gray suit walked in, followed by Lily Vaughn. Lily looked tired and scared but alive. She saw me, and something like relief crossed her face. "Jeremy, you found everything." I stood up, not sure what to say. The woman in the suit introduced herself as Agent Patricia Voss from the EPA. She sat down next to Lily, who was clutching a folder to her chest, like a lifeline. Detective Kowalski gestured for me to sit back down. "Lily wanted to thank you in person. She also wanted to explain why she involved you." Lily's voice was quiet but steady. "In biology class, you were the only one who took my research seriously. Everyone else thought I was being paranoid or making a big deal out of nothing. But you asked real questions, and you listened to the answers. When I realized I needed help getting this information out safely, I thought of you. I'm sorry I dragged you into this without asking. I didn't know who else I could trust." I shook my head. "You don't need to apologize. I wish you'd told me sooner. If I'd known you were in danger. I wouldn't have told you because I didn't want you in danger too. But when my dad showed up at school today doing his performance, I knew I had to move fast. If the local police found me before the feds did, I'd disappear for real. So I used the breadcrumbs to lead you to the evidence, knowing you'd do the right thing and call someone outside the school district." Agent Voss spoke up. "Lily's research is extraordinary. She's documented years of systematic environmental violations with a level of detail that will hold up in federal court. Northridge Manufacturing is facing criminal charges, and several executives, including board members, will be prosecuted." "What happens to Principal Vaughn?" I asked. Detective Kowalski's smile was cold. "Principal Richard Vaughn was arrested 20 minutes ago on charges of conspiracy to commit kidnapping, obstruction of justice, and criminal intimidation. We have recorded phone conversations between him and the men he hired to find Lily. We have financial records showing payments from Northridge Manufacturing to his personal accounts. We have everything." Lily set her folder on the table and opened it, revealing stacks of documents. The top page was a handwritten note that read, "Dad, I know what you did. I know who you really are. I'm sorry I couldn't trust you, but I had to choose between protecting you and protecting everyone else you were hurting. I chose everyone else. I hope someday you understand why." Her hands were shaking as she closed the folder. "He called me 2 days ago when I was hiding. Somehow got Coach Draven's number. He begged me to come home, said everything would be fine, said we could work it out as a family." His voice sounded so genuine. For a minute, I almost believed him. "What stopped you?" Agent Voss asked gently. Lily looked up, her eyes hard despite the tears. "Because while he was begging me to come home, I could hear someone in the background asking if he had my location yet. He was trying to keep me on the phone long enough to trace the call. My own father was hunting me." The room fell silent. Agent Voss put a hand on Lily's shoulder. "You're safe now. And because of your courage, dozens of other families will be safe from the contamination. You did the right thing." Lily wiped her eyes. "What happens now?" "You'll be placed in temporary protective custody until the trials are concluded," Detective Kowalski said. "Your mother has been contacted and she's flying back from her business trip. She had no knowledge of your father's activities and she's cooperating fully with the investigation. You'll stay with her in a secure location until this is resolved." "And school?" Lily asked, looking at me. "Can I come back?" "That's up to you," Agent Voss said. "But I'd recommend finishing the semester remotely given the media attention this is going to generate. Once the story breaks about Northridge Manufacturing, you'll be the center of a firestorm." Lily nodded slowly. Then she looked at me again. "Jeremy, there's one more thing. Coach Draven wanted me to tell you that you have a gift for seeing what other people miss. He thinks you should consider investigative journalism or criminal justice. He said the world needs more people who ask questions and actually listen to answers." I felt my face flush. I was just trying to help." "That's exactly the point," Lily said with a small smile. "Most people wouldn't have. Most people would have seen those texts and ignored them or turned their phones off or told themselves it wasn't their business. You kept digging until you found the truth. That's rare." Detective Kowalski stood up. "Jeremy, we'll need you to come back tomorrow to give a complete formal statement. For now, we're calling your parents to pick you up. You should go home and rest. This has been a traumatic day for everyone." As I stood to leave, Lily reached out and grabbed my hand. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for not walking past me again, for paying attention this time." I squeezed her hand once, not trusting my voice, then followed an officer out of the conference room. My parents arrived 30 minutes later, both of them pale and frightened. My mom hugged me so tight I could barely breathe while my dad spoke with Detective Kowalski in low, urgent tones. The drive home was silent. When we got there, my mom made me sit at the kitchen table while she heated up soup I couldn't eat, and my dad paced, running his hands through his hair. Finally, he sat down across from me. "Son, what you did today was incredibly brave, but it was also incredibly dangerous. If things had gone differently, if Principal Vaughn had found you before the police did." "I know, Dad. I'm sorry I scared you." "Don't apologize," my mom said fiercely. You saved that girl's life. You did what was right even though it was terrifying. That's what we raised you to do. I just wish you hadn't had to. That night I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. My phone sat on the nightstand, silent now. No more anonymous texts, no more breadcrumbs to follow, just the weight of everything that had happened pressing down on my chest. The next morning, the story broke. News vans surrounded Northridge High School. Reporters camped outside the county police station. Headlines screamed about the environmental scandal, the principal's arrest, the brave student investigator who'd risked everything to expose the truth. Lily's name and photo were everywhere. My name too, though less prominently. Student who helped break the case, the articles called me. I stayed home from school on Detective Kowalski's advice. He called that afternoon to tell me that 3 more Northridge manufacturing executives had been arrested, that the EPA was shutting down the plant pending a full investigation, and that Principal Vaughn had refused to post bail because he knew he'd be safer in custody than out on the street where his former associates might silence him. Coach Draven gave a statement to the press, explaining how he'd helped Lily because his own daughter had died from leukemia 3 years ago, and he'd always suspected the contaminated water was responsible. He jumped at the chance to help Lily prove what he'd never been able to prove about his daughter's death. The following week, Austin came over, and we sat in my backyard throwing a football back and forth. He'd been texting me constantly, making sure I was okay, sharing all the insane rumors circulating at school. Dude, he said, catching the ball and spinning it in his hands. Everyone's calling you a hero. The sophomores are talking about you like you're Batman or something. I'm not a hero. Lily did all the work. I just followed the clues she left. Austin threw the ball back, hard enough that I had to lunge to catch it. Yeah, but most people wouldn't have followed those clues. Most people would have deleted those texts and pretended they never happened. You didn't. That counts. A month later, I was called to testify before a federal grand jury. I sat in a wood-paneled room and told everything I knew while lawyers and officials listened with intense focus. Lily testified too, presenting her evidence with the same methodical precision she'd shown in biology class. She was brilliant. Afterwards, in the hallway outside the courtroom, Lily's mom thanked me with tears in her eyes. She looked like an older version of Lily, same determined jaw, same sharp eyes. My daughter says you gave her hope when she'd almost given up, Mrs. Vaughn said. She'd been in hiding for 3 days, terrified and alone, and then she thought of you, thought of how you'd listened to her in biology class. She decided if she could just get the information to you, you'd know what to do with it. I'm just glad she's safe, I said. Mrs. Vaughn wiped her eyes. Richard, my husband, he's been formally charged with 37 counts, including attempted kidnapping and conspiracy to commit murder. The prosecutors found evidence that if they'd found Lily, the men he hired weren't planning to bring her home. They were planning to make her disappear permanently. My own husband was going to kill our daughter to protect his reputation. She broke down sobbing, and I stood there awkwardly until Agent Voss appeared and guided her away. Lily came out of the courtroom a few minutes later, flanked by lawyers. She saw me and smiled, tired but real. Hey, lab partner. Hey, you doing okay? She shrugged. I'm alive. My dad's going to prison for the rest of his life. My research destroyed the town's biggest employer and put 2,000 people out of work. But the water's getting cleaned up and people aren't being poisoned anymore. So yeah, I guess I'm okay. The trial lasted 3 months. I testified twice more, answering questions about the texts, the library moment, Lily's research files. Principal Vaughn sat at the defense table looking smaller than I remembered, his expensive suit unable to hide how much he'd diminished. He never looked at Lily during her testimony, just stared at the table while his daughter explained how he'd threatened her, tried to bribe her, ultimately tried to have her killed. The jury deliberated for 6 hours, guilty on all counts. Principal Vaughn would spend 40 years in federal prison. 4 other Northridge manufacturing executives received sentences ranging from 15 to 25 years. The company filed for bankruptcy and the plant was demolished. The contaminated areas began the slow process of environmental remediation that would take decades. Lily transferred to a private school across the state where she could finish high school without the constant media attention. But she texted me sometimes, sharing articles about environmental science or asking my opinion on her new research projects. She was still investigating, still asking questions, still refusing to look away from uncomfortable truths. Coach Draven retired from teaching and started a nonprofit focused on environmental justice, working with students to investigate potential contamination in their communities. He asked me to join the board when I turned 18. I said yes. Austin and I graduated and went to different colleges. I studied journalism, focusing on investigative reporting. Every professor who heard my story had the same reaction, a mix of admiration and concern. You understand the risks, right? They'd ask. This kind of journalism makes powerful people angry. I'd think of Lily crying alone in the library, of Principal Vaughn's desperate performance, of how close we'd come to never knowing the truth. I understand, I'd say. Someone has to ask the questions. 2 years after the trial, I was home for winter break when I got a text from an unknown number. For a second, my heart stopped, remembering those anonymous messages from years ago. But this one just said, "Coffee? It's Lily." I'd love to catch up. We met at a small cafe downtown, away from the old school and all its memories. Lily looked different, older, her hair longer and her expression more confident. She'd survived and it showed. We talked for 3 hours, catching up on college, on life, on everything that had happened since that Thursday in the cafeteria, when her father had stormed in crying and yelling. "I'm writing a book," Lily said toward the end of our conversation. "About the investigation, the cover-up, all of it. My publisher wants me to focus on the environmental science and the corporate corruption, but I want to include the personal story too. The fact that my father chose money and reputation over his daughter's life. That's important context," I said. "It shows why these crimes go unreported. Because the people in power are often the people we're supposed to trust." "Exactly." She paused, stirring her coffee. "I want to include you in the book too, Jeremy. What you did, following those breadcrumbs, calling the county police when you realized the school officers couldn't be trusted. That's part of the story. I'm okay with that." "Good. Because I've been thinking a lot about that day. About why I chose you. You want to know the real reason?" "Always." Lily smiled, sad and knowing. "Because in biology class, when I was explaining my research, you asked me a question nobody else had asked. You said, 'What happens if you're right? What are you going to do with this information?' Everyone else was focused on the science, on whether my methodology was sound or my data was accurate. But you were the only one who thought about consequences, who understood that finding the truth was just the beginning, not the end." I remembered that conversation now, vaguely. I'd been genuinely curious about her plans. "What did you say?" I asked. "I think I said I hadn't figured that out yet. You told me to be careful because people don't like being proven wrong, especially about things that cost money. You said sometimes the truth isn't enough. You need proof and a plan and people who will back you up." I'd said that? It sounded wiser than I remembered being at 16. "Yeah, and I didn't fully understand what you meant until later when I started receiving threats. Then I realized you'd been warning me. You'd seen something I'd missed, that having evidence wasn't the same as being safe." We finished our coffee and stood outside, the cafe in the cold December air. Lily pulled her coat tighter and looked at me seriously. "I'm testifying before Congress next month about environmental oversight and corporate accountability. They want to use my case as an example of regulatory failure. It's going to be broadcast everywhere. Will you watch?" "Of course." She smiled. "Good. Because I'm scared, and it helps knowing someone out there is paying attention. Someone who understands why this matters." "I do understand," I said. "And for what it's worth, you're the bravest person I've ever met. Not many people would stand up to their own father, let alone an entire corporation and a corrupt system." Lily's eyes got bright with tears. "Thank you. For everything. For listening in biology class, for following the breadcrumbs, for not giving up when it would have been easier to look away, for seeing me when I needed to be seen." We hugged goodbye, and I watched her walk to her car, shoulders straight despite everything she'd been through. She'd survived, exposed the truth, and was still fighting, still asking questions, still refusing to be silent. 6 months later, Lily's congressional testimony went viral. Her calm, detailed explanation of how corruption had nearly cost her life sparked national conversations about environmental protection and corporate oversight. New legislation was proposed. Oversight agencies received increased funding. Northridge Manufacturing became a cautionary tale taught in business ethics classes. And Lily Vaughn became the face of a movement, young people investigating environmental crimes in their communities, refusing to accept that some truths were too dangerous to speak. I watched her testimony from my dorm room with Austin on video chat, both of us marveling at how far she'd come from that quiet girl crying alone in the library. She ended her statement by saying, "Someone once asked me what I would do if I was right about the contamination. At the time, I didn't have a good answer. Now I do. If you're right about something that's hurting people, you speak up. You find evidence. You protect yourself and find allies you can trust. And then you tell the truth as loudly and as clearly as you can, no matter who it threatens or what it costs you. Because silence is complicity, and looking away is a choice. I chose to look. I hope others will too." The committee gave her a standing ovation. Principal Vaughn, watching from prison, had no comment. Years passed, and I built a career investigating stories about institutional corruption and abuse of power, always thinking of Lily's question, "What are you going to do with this information?" The answer was always the same. Tell the truth, protect the vulnerable, refuse to look away. Lily published her book, finished college, started a consulting firm helping communities investigate environmental violations. We stayed in touch, occasional texts and coffee when we were in the same city, bound by that shared experience of uncovering something dark and refusing to let it stay hidden. Sometimes I think about that moment in the library 2 weeks before everything exploded, when Lily looked up at me with tears in her eyes and almost spoke. I wonder what she would have said if I'd stopped and asked if she was okay. Maybe nothing would have changed. Maybe she still would have had to go into hiding and orchestrate everything from the shadows. Or maybe she would have trusted me sooner, and we could have gone to authorities together, and she wouldn't have spent 3 days terrified and alone. I'll never know. But I learned something from her that stays with me in every investigation, every interview, every moment when looking away would be easier than pressing forward. The people crying alone in corners might be the ones who see the truth. Everyone else is missing, and the desperate performances of powerful people often hide the darkest secrets. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is follow breadcrumbs left by someone who trusts you enough to lead you toward justice. And the question, "Who knows my daughter?" can mean so many different things depending on who's asking and what they're really trying to find. Thanks for watching till the end. Make sure to subscribe and like to not miss the next story.